Well, Sam, super excited to have a conversation with you today. As I've told you before, I actually use the book we're going to start with, but you've written more than one, and we'll talk about them. But the book we're going to start with is actually around the issue of pain. It's actually a required book in my I have an organizational leadership and change management class, and this is required reading. It's called Leadership Pain: The Classroom for Growth. And in it, you write, leadership that doesn't produce pain is either in a short season of unusual blessing or isn't really making a difference. Here I am about to start a new job, right? And so, and use this as a book for training and more. Nobody wants to hear this, but it's essential. Why is pain an inherent part of leadership?
So the way I stumbled into that, first of all, thank you so much, Ed, for inviting me to be part of what you do. And you, before I go any further, I need for you to know, whenever I read something happening in the church world, my first thought is, wonder what Ed Stetzer thinks about this.
Thank you.
Yeah, because you are a very, very seasoned and eclectic thinker. So back to pain. I'm a leadership consultant. I get to travel the world. I've got clients on every continent except Antarctica. And I have found the one thing that is common to all great leaders. It is not administration. It is not money. It is not staffing. It is not vision. It's not location. It's none of those things. It is their ability to handle pain. And hence the thesis of the book, Ed, is you will grow only to the threshold of your pain. You will grow only to the threshold of your pain. And what I've also found with pain is that we all have levels of it, and we consciously or unconsciously check out and create our own thresholds. And yet we know that to go higher, to go wider and deeper, there's going to be more pain around the corner. And pain comes in all kinds of ways. And the most painful pain is when it comes from areas you never thought would come from. In fact, the most painful pain is people you thought were there for you, are going to be with you, are supporting you, and you find out through all kinds of different ways that somebody in that circle was doing things and saying things and posting things that were not really encouraging for you. So pain is a real thing. You cannot avoid pain. You can try to get around it. But if you create a threshold for you, you're going to live an unfulfilled life, because the pain will be, I should have been there. I could have been there. Why did I let so-and-so stop me? Why did I let that lack or that situation take me down? So yeah, pain is a real thing. And everybody listening to me, there's not a single person listening to us right now, Ed, who's not nodding their head saying, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And I think a real important distinction too is that, and this is, again, when I teach this, we go through your book, leaders lean into the pain. And again, not in a way that's like, I love pain. But one of the things I quote, I know it's a little strange, but there's this line in this movie called I Bought a Zoo, and it says, just literally 20 seconds of embarrassing bravery, and I promise you something great will come of it. I think to take, to say, this starting this conversation with this underperforming staff member, or starting this conversation about we have to redirect where we're headed as an organization, that first 20 seconds, it takes some serious bravery and to get pressed through, to lean into the pain. And what I've found is that leaders are people who are willing to make, not just this, but are willing to make hard decisions. And the reason people don't make hard decisions is there's pain on the other side. Starting through and sometimes on the other side, but you have to get through that pain to get to what makes a difference. So how do you even encourage, our audience as pastors and church leaders, how do you encourage them to be willing to lean into painful situations?
So I can tell you two things that have helped me. Number one is reflecting on my own journey with Jesus. So I'm 70 years of age. I got saved in my father's church, who was the pastor when I was 7. So I've been saved off and on, Ed. So since the age of 7, and I can tell you that reflect on God's journey through my life, in my life, by my life, I just see every inflection point that went up was when I was able to embrace the pain, not numb the pain, not run from the pain, not try to pray the pain away, not try to create an army of people who will support me, but I just look at my life, Ed, and the common denominator at every inflection point, at every juncture in my life where life went in a positive, godly direction is when I was able to say, God, I don't like this, don't want this, but I'm going to hang in there. Can you make this short? Can we get out of this? The second thing is that people who avoid pain also lead people who avoid pain. So you create a ceiling for the organization. I can tell you, I've had literally thousands of very, very, very difficult conversations with people. And I've never gone into that conversation feeling sure of myself. I've never gone into the conversation feeling like, yeah, I think God is with me. I think we can make this happen. I have never gone into it with full assurance that we're going to come out of this okay. I tell you what, my knees are always shaking. My voice is always quivering. I'm scared because these are defining moments. Because most of these level conversations are that level conversations because of your level of relationship with them. If it was somebody that I was not in a relationship with, I can have a tough conversation with them. Yeah, I don't want to do that. But yeah, it'll be over in 30 minutes. It's highlight, delete, I'm done.
Right.
But if I'm scared of that, that tells me the level of relationship and collateral damage that might come from that. And so I have learned that, Sam, don't try to get cocky about this. Don't be arrogant about it. Don't think you got this. Anybody who says they got this is just full of hubris, and it's not going to work out good for them because it's not going to come across that way. So those are the two things that helped me, my history and knowing that I'm scared.
Yeah. And I think that's key because I think people kind of assume that, my job as a leader is to sometimes even exude confidence, but I'm still like, we got this hard, we have to make a hard decision. We're going to do this hard path and I'm going to be confident about it. But inside I'm experiencing uncertainty as well. Part of my job is to project leadership confidence. But I recently had a conversation with a couple of leaders who had struggled with making hard decisions, and I shared with them. I said, there are basically three paths. These, and I kind of walked through. You were talking to them about this. There are three paths, and the phrase I used but all your paths are pain. And it's again, I was thinking back to Sam when I'm saying this. I said all your paths are pain. The question is, which pain are you going to pick? And on the other side of that pain, which result is going to be the better, the right, the desired outcome? But what often happens is people get paralyzed by the fact that they don't have a solution that's not painful, or they'll find a solution that isn't going to accomplish what they need to do, but it's the least painful, or maybe it's not painful, but then the pain comes down the road. When you don't make a decision because it's hard, you have to make a harder decision later. And that becomes even more painful. So I guess for me, when I tell people this, it sort of resonates with people. Like you said, people are like, yeah, I could see that. But at the end of the day, I just want to live a happy life. I don't want people to be unhappy. And so I'm going to have to make a choice. I have to make a choice, the kind of leader I want to be. So and for those of you who don't know Sam, he's like mentoring half my friends. This is what he does. He does this incredible leadership, mentoring and training and more. So when you do that, you're sitting down with one of these pastors that I happen to know who you're working with. How do you help them to see the necessity? Because I want the pastor and church leaders to see the necessity of making hard decisions without also just being a jerk who just likes to make other people's life difficult as well. There's a balance there. How do you walk that path with them?
So there are many questions I can ask them, but the one question that got me the best response, Ed, is to ask them simply this: if you were not to make this decision, what's happening? And they'll tell you, it'll be bad, people will be leaving, money will be down, we will lose that location, half the staff will leave. Okay. So, we do what Jesus said, count the cost. Mm-hmm. And I help them, what you would call it reality therapy. I basically say, hey, listen, if you don't do this, what's going to happen? And I let them tell me in their own words what will happen. Now, if they say to me, hey, if I don't do anything, we'll be fine. Say, okay, then we should not have this conversation. Let's talk about something else. but I'm in this room with you because you're trying to process this, and I'm helping you figure out, if you don't do this, what's going to happen. Many of your listeners who are listening to us right now, Ed, are making major decisions. Mm-hmm. And I want to tell you what we've come through. The year that we are in right now, in my estimation, is going to be the most consequential year for the Church of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Because this year, churches and pastors, like you said, our main audience, you're going to make more consequential decisions this year. Till last year, you were doing systems and structures and reorganizing and, getting your hybrid programs together and hiring different ones and so on and so forth. But this year, you're going to make phenomenally consequential decisions. And there's more pain this year than you have ever experienced in your life, simply because of the level of decisions. So, in my work, Ed, I talk to 5 to 7 large church pastors every day. And I can tell you the level of conversations I'm having are definitely much different and higher than we had a year and a half, 2 years ago. Questions are different, scenarios are different, consequences are different, how they process it is different, the people they process it with are different. So this year, and I know everyone's knocking their heads off right now, nodding it off, saying, yeah, that's right. And it's all from staffing to what you're preaching, to what your people require, to who is back, who's never coming back. I mean, you're going to make some major decisions. And if I could use an example of the fatigue of decision-making, leadership pain. So it doesn't matter which president of the United States might be. I'm not going to name any names. It really doesn't matter. They go into the office younger, and within a year's time, they got bags under their eyes, crow's feet. Now, you know they don't get stuck in traffic like, at least I do. I know you don't. You have police escort everywhere you go. But yeah, so, they don't get stuck in traffic. They make traffic for others, but they don't get stuck in traffic. They don't have to stand in grocery lines wondering if aisle number 5 is going to be open. They don't have to worry about diet because they have chefs, they have dietitians, they have the best of the best of everything. And yet, why do those bags appear under their eyes? And why do they have a slouch in their shoulder? It is that. All the time, doesn't matter what decision you make, half the people are not going to like it. Doesn't matter who you are. And that is leadership pain. So back to what you were saying, Ed, if a leader gets caught into the cycle of trying to lead by consensus and trying to keep people happy, the most unhappy person will be you.
Yeah, and I would say too, it's interesting. I guess I still do. I do seminars on church revitalization, and I had a joke that I put in my seminar, and I said, Pastor, if you're trying to lead your church and to do some sort of revitalization, and 10% of your church isn't mad at you, you're not doing anything significant. And then everyone would laugh, and I would say, but if 70% of your church is mad at you, you might want to, slow down and tone that back and, pace yourself a little more. But what's interesting is, in the last few years, if 10% of your church isn't mad at you, I mean, you probably kind of got it's just more that the level of people unhappy. I talked to one pastor who said, I used to get emails, now I get text. So the unhappy people are closer, more engaged. And it's not the only answer. We recognize there's multiple things, but one of the answers has to be effective leadership. And that's been, a passion for you. We call this the Stetzer ChurchLeaders Podcast. So leadership deeply matters to us. Okay, so one of the things in that of course you write and speak on these things, but in your book you say Christians often have more difficulty handling personal pain than unbelievers. You go on to write, for church leaders, pain is pervasive and persistent. And I want to just press on this one more. What's some unhelpful or problematic ways that church leaders respond to pain? Because they know, I mean, people are nodding their heads. It's been a painful few years, been the hardest time that I've led in my lifetime, probably many people you're working with as well. So help us think of some things to avoid unhelpful or problematic ways church leaders respond to pain.
I think, first of all, is the theology that guides our view of God. That if you are going through painful situation, you're doing something wrong. Yet in the Bible, everybody went through painful situations because they were doing right. So our theology is messed up like that. And also we feel like God's got to deliver me from this pain. And so we have to understand that God leads through pain. And every leader I know walks with a limp. Every leader walks with a limp. And that is what brings humility into people's lives. But in church world, pastors as a profession, as a vocation, as a calling, see more of the wear and tear of life than any other human endeavor. An insurance agent sees you for insurance needs, your banker sees your financial needs, your car mechanic sees your car needs, your doctor sees your physical needs, etc. But a pastor sees you from the womb to the tomb. They see you when there are babies being born. They're seeing when your mama is dying. They see you when you're getting married. They see you when you are getting divorced. They see you when you buy a new house. They see you when you're getting evicted from your house. They see you when you have a job. They see you when you are asking the church to help you get groceries to the house. So the pastor sees the wear and tear. And the second thing about that is, pastors never off. Pastors never off. So this is what I want every pastor to hear me say. As long as you are pastoring the church as a senior pastor, you will never have another vacation or holiday in your life. You just will not do that. You could be on a Mediterranean cruise. And two things are going to happen. You're going to keep thinking about the church, number one. And number two, you're going to be so dysfunctional. It's Sunday morning. Relax, chill. But no, you know what you're doing? You're firing up your iPad and watching your church from where you are on vacation. And then you're getting ticked off because that light bulb is out and they made the wrong announcements and so-and-so is wearing that when they're not supposed to, or, oh, they forgot to make that one announcement, and, oh, he preached too long. And I mean, so it never stops. And that is where it is so important. And I write about that in my book, that pastors have what we call pain partners. Unless I have 5 pain partners in my life. Ed, I know literally hundreds of thousands of people, but have 5 pain partners. And with these 5 pain partners, I can be naked, I can tell them, and here's the best part, they don't have to give me advice or talk me out of that, just be there.
Yeah.
And I would encourage everybody to say, who are my pain partners? Who is willing to walk this journey with me? And so every pastor, you signed up for this, and the only time you will not have the pain you have right now is post-pastoring. And I hope you're alive for that moment.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. By the way, the book is Leadership Pain, the Classroom for Growth. Sam, too, one of the things that you do, kind of this coaching and things of that sort, and there's a way that folks can engage that. Tell us about that real quickly, the offer that you have.
Oh, yeah. So I have a thing called the Sam Chan Leadership Institute, and the price is amazing. The price is amazing. Can I tell you the price now and then tell you what you get for it? The price is pay whatever you want to pay. You want to pay $1, you want to pay $1,000, no question asked. So what will you get for that? You'll get 12 of my books, 1 book a month. You can get hard copy as well as digital. You'll get 3 videos that teach that book every month. So 12 books, 36 videos, and a certificate at the end. Here's the website for that, samchandoffer.com. It'll be on the screen, or it'll be placed somewhere there. Sam, SAMCHAND, D as in David, offer, OFFER.com. And all you got to do is go on there. It'll ask you, how much do you want to pay? Where do you want us to ship this? And that's the end of the story. So no one's going to push back on it. I'll tell you, Ed, where it has really caught fire.
Yeah.
It has not caught fire with senior pastors, but it has caught fire with their teams.
Interesting.
What pastors are saying is to their staffs, they're saying to their elders, leaders, volunteers, saying, hey, you want to grow? There's no budget from the church for this. Here's the website. Go log in. And so we've got literally hundreds of thousands of people at what I call the executive and lower level. They are just tuned into this, and it's a blessing to the pastor.
That's awesome. Well, talk to me a little bit about how you think of this year, because you've mentioned this year being different on a few occasions. So what have you, if you're talking to pastors and church leaders, what are you hearing about it? I guess you touched on it a little bit. Give me a little more though. What's different from what you're seeing right now and where you're seeing we're going?
So where you're going is not where you've been. So if your paradigms are mere tweaks of what you were doing a few years ago, you're going to crash. We are living in a time in which you have to re-engineer, call it re-church if you want to. You got to rethink, not just your calling, but how you expedite your calling. For example, your metrics of church have changed. Remember a few years ago, we used to measure church by the A, B, C, A being attendance, B, building, C, cash. Well, cash is still king, but we found out that attendance can fluctuate greatly. And buildings, we did church for all kinds of months and years in some cases without a building. So what are you measuring? There are two things that churches have to measure right now. And this that I'm giving to you, I just organized my thinking, but it's not original with me. Two things. One is involvement, that's internal. Impact, it is external. How do you measure involvement inside the church? And how do you measure impact outside the church? And the way to do that is not go to your team and say, here are the two things, and this is how we're going to measure. You are also at a different place in how you are leading. And so we've got to get our teams together and say, okay, in our church, if we were to measure involvement, what are the numbers we're looking for? How do we measure involvement? If we were to measure impact, how would that be? Because once they have ownership of that, and the reason that you want to go at it that way is because decision-making, the art and science of decision-making has shifted because people receive decisions differently now than they used to.
Tell me more about that. They receive decisions differently now than they used to. Tell me more about that.
So there was a time that you as a pastor could come into your staff meeting and throw something on the whiteboard and say, this is what we're thinking about doing. This is the what, this is the why, this is the how and where, and so on and so forth, and go into a planning mode. Now you have to encourage them to be part of the decision making. Because what happened in our life, in our world, is people we trusted, organizations that we trusted in all spheres of life disappointed us in decision making. And so people don't trust decision makers as much as they used to. And now we have to make sure that they are part of the decision making process. Now, that's not a difficult process, but it's a process that we used to bypass, but now you got to lead people through that.
So definitely, the level of distrust in society, lots of other things have changed as well. And I want to come back to because we're primarily going to talk about leadership pain, because it's I just again to say it's so influential to my way of thinking, and I find it helpful. I find that leaders are people who make the hard, painful choices. I mean, it's just consistently the right choices, not just making them because they're painful. That would not be helpful. Okay, but that's not the only thing you've written on as well. And so, because that book's actually a few years old, but the one that just came out is How Leaders Create Chaos and Why They Should, which is kind of a fascinating title, but that's you're kind of the master of the good title. So why should leaders create chaos? How do they create chaos, and why should they do it? And this is again partly from Sam's book, How Leaders Create Chaos and Why They Should. Tell us.
So I was watching this leader talk at a gathering, and he was telling his stories that I did this, and I started this many churches, and then I became a missionary, and then I did this, I did that, I moved from this country to that country, and all his stories were about where he was. And I started looking at him and saying to myself, but what's happening today? Where are you today? Because every leader who's listening to us right now is started off as a roaring lion. I mean, nobody in a leadership capacity, no pastor listening to us right now said, you know something, I just want a mediocre church. And I just want some average preaching and an average worship, an average location, average money, average people. I just want an average family, average kids, average wife, average husband. I just want an average car. Nobody starts off that way. So everybody listening to me started off somewhere in life with a roar, like a roaring lion. And then life happens. Disappointments happen. People come. Resources dry up. Promises are unkept. And we get tamed. So we look like a lion, but instead of a roar, now we got a meow. We become a domesticated house cat. And that book, How Leaders Create Chaos and Why They Should, is simply saying, get your roar back. You were born with a roar. You didn't come here to take sides. You came here to take over. You did not step out to just be another church. You were going to make a difference. And so what happened to you? And that book basically encourages people to say, you are a roaring lion. You still are a lion. Get your roar back.
Interesting. Okay. So when the chaos comes, I mean, what does that look like? What does it look like to practically create, and maybe even give us some examples of ways you advise leaders to do that, to create some chaos that produces something better on the other side?
Well, I think that is what this year is going to be about. It's going to be a chaotic year. There's going to be staff shifts. There's going to be how you organize the services shift. There'll be how you deliver your services shift. There's going to be where you allocate your money internally and externally shift. There's going to be how you measure your success and your what's not working out shift. The kind of sermons you're going to be preaching, the kind of series you're going to be doing, because people are asking different questions. And the indictment of the church is still the same. We are answering questions nobody's asking. So so it's going to be a chaotic moment because people are looking for stability right now.
Right.
And you are going to offer them. So here's what I know about the Bible, Ed. In everything within us as human beings wants to move from the uncertain to the certain, from the unknown to the known. But in the Bible, every biblical character, God has moved them from the known to the unknown, from the certain to the uncertain. Everybody who's doing anything, Old Testament, New Testament, everybody, God is moving us toward the unknown. And that is why leading in ambiguity, which is creating chaos, leading in ambiguity, in my opinion, is the highest level of leadership. Highest, Moses and Joshua. Moses was a better leader than Joshua. Why? Because Joshua had already been as a spy. He had crossed the river. He'd come back from the river. He knew what it was all about. He had the GPS. He had the map. Joshua knew where he was going. Moses did not. He was leading people in an ambiguous period of time for 40 some years. So I think people listening to us who are looking for surety and certainty got to know that God doesn't play that game. The way he tests us is to put us into positions in which all we've got is him and to trust him. And when we do that, that is where the pain erupts. That's where chaos erupts. And then we want to tamp it down, because the most dangerous word that a pastor says is yes. Everything shifts after that.
Yeah, for sure. And again, I because I've read so many of your books, I want to bring out one more theme from one other of your books. It's called "Change Has Changed: Time for a Strategic Reset." Now, you wrote this; it came out in October 2021. So this is something you're writing in the midst of the pandemic. All the things that are there. And you talked about major shifts. Matter of fact, you talked around earthquakes. Our environment has changed, we have changed, and the people around us have changed, right? So, and particularly that people around us have changed. You've already kind of come to that. So here's the question. How do we lead in what's become a new normal, where change has changed? And what kind of reset do the pastors and church leaders who listen to this podcast, what do they need to consider?
And the question is so appropriate and so right. Change will not start in the grassroots. It's not going to start in mid-management. It's going to start with you. And here are 2 or 3 questions that every senior pastor listening to me right now needs to ask themselves. I'll give the easy one first. How has my leadership style changed? Not the substance, but how has my leadership style changed? The style of leadership. Question number 2 is, how has my thinking about people changed? When we went through the difficult times a few years ago, people were not afraid of the sickness. People were afraid of people. 6 feet apart, 10 feet apart, put this on your face, don't put it on your face, etc., etc. And so how do you view people now? Because it's not that they have changed, you have changed toward them. And I think the third question is, what are the main motivations of people now? Main motivations of people. So the motivational aspirations that we used to offer people at one time are not the same motivations that motivate people now. And you got to step back from that. These are introspective questions. The first one is an existential question, because if you don't know that you have shifted, you'll not be able to lead your people. So it's the other thing, in my book on culture, I write culture is created at the top, sustained from the bottom, but destroyed from the middle. It is created at the top, sustained from the bottom, and destroyed from the middle. If it's destroyed from the middle, how do those people in the middle know where you are? Because if they don't know where you are in your thinking, and you're not talking about that, then they will go by what they thought you thought, but you're not thinking what you thought. Hence, change itself has changed.
Fascinating. Okay, so if that's the case, and I think I track it with you and agree with you, give us some as a last question. Give us some practical ways that pastors and church leaders can. I mean, I guess I'm kind of combining some of the themes. We were just talking about how change has changed, but I also still want to come back to that pain. Again, the primary book we've been talking about, I mentioned a couple others, but the primary one has to do with pain and leadership pain, the classroom for growth. So what are some of the most important practical advice you can give pastors and church leaders with the way change has changed, now navigating their pain in leadership?
Again, you cannot stand or sit in front of your team, your staff, your volunteer leaders, your executive leaders, and tell them this is how it's changed. Big change is how do you bring them along? So for example, if I was pastor of a church today, I'd be much more organic than strategic. Strategy will come down the road. So I'd get my leaders in the room with a whiteboard and just simply ask them, guys, how have the people in our church changed? Question number 2, how have the people in our community changed? The people that we serve. How have you changed? How do you perceive me to have changed? I have changed, but tell me how you see me as changed. And when you create that kind of conversation out there without trying to come up with a plan at the end of that meeting, and just start that conversation, you can come back to the plan 3 weeks later. But right now, you're just saying to people, everything that you see in front of you has changed, but we don't talk about it because we are afraid or we don't want to offend somebody. So when the pastor puts them out there, simply saying, how have you changed? How have the people changed? How has the community changed? Hey, tell me, how have I changed? Talk to me without getting defensive. Just talk to me and just write it on the whiteboard and just talk about it. Because if they take the journey with you and really buy into the change has changed, then the strategies and the tactics that might emerge from that will have much more Velcro stickiness to them than if you were to stand up there and say, hey guys, let me tell you 3 things that have changed. That's a non-starter in the world we're living in now.
World we're living in now. Sam Chand, super helpful, again, to the point where I actually require his book on leadership pain for my students. And so thankful for you, Sam. Good to see you again. And we've been friends for a long time. And thanks for coming on the podcast with us.
What an honor and delight. Thank you for everything you do, Ed. Thank you.